The colony on Epsilon Prime had been home to over 200,000 people for more than 60 years. It sat in a quiet corner of the galaxy, far from the busy trade lanes and political squabbles of older worlds. The settlers had come there looking for peace, clean air, and a fresh start. They built farms that stretched across red plains, schools where children learned under twin suns, and hospitals that healed without asking for credits in return. Life was simple, hard at times, but good. They traded with a few nearby alien outposts, mostly harmless merchants who brought spare parts and took grain in return. No one expected war. No one even thought about it. Then the sky turned black. It happened without warning. One moment, the morning suns were rising over the eastern ridge, painting the sky in soft gold and violet. The next, the stars vanished. Not faded, vanished, as if something huge had slid between Epsilon Prime and the rest of the universe. People stopped in the streets. Farmers looked up from their fields. Kids froze on their way to school. Something was wrong. Danny Ruiz was working the night shift at the colony's main comms tower. He was 24, lean, with tired eyes and a habit of chewing on his pen when stressed. He'd been monitoring routine data bursts from a weather satellite when his screen flickered. Then alarms blared. Not the fire or storm kind, but the deep, gut-shaking tone reserved for orbital threats. His heart jumped. He checked the long-range sensors. Nothing registered at first. Then, all at once, thousands of contacts appeared. Massive, fast, silent. He tried to raise the colony defense coordinator, but the line was dead. He switched to emergency broadcast. "This is Danny Ruiz at Comms Tower Alpha. Unknown fleet inbound." "Repeat, unknown fleet inbound." No ID, no hail, no transponder codes. The transmission cut off as the first energy beam lanced down from orbit. It struck the central power plant. The explosion lit up the sky like a second sun. Buildings melted. Trees turned to ash before they could burn. The ground shook so hard that cracks split open in the earth, swallowing roads whole. Panic erupted. People ran, but there was nowhere to go. The colony had no military, no shields, no fighters, just a few patrol drones meant for chasing off space debris. Within minutes, the invaders began systematic bombardment. Not random, not chaotic, precise. Every strike hit a key point: water purification, medical centers, food silos, the spaceport. They weren't just attacking, they were erasing. Danny stumbled out of the comms tower as it collapsed behind him. Smoke stung his eyes. The air smelled like burnt metal and ozone. He saw a woman dragging a child through the rubble, both covered in dust. A man stood in the middle of the street staring at his hands as if they might hold answers. Then another beam hit the eastern district. The flash blinded Danny for a few seconds. When his vision cleared, that part of the city was gone. Just a crater glowing red at the edges. He knew he had to get off-world, not to save himself, but to tell someone what happened. He ran toward the emergency hangar on the edge of town. Most of the small ships there were already destroyed, but one old scout pod, barely spaceworthy, still had power. He climbed in, fingers shaking as he bypassed the safety locks. The engine coughed, then roared to life. He punched in the launch sequence and shot skyward just as another blast vaporized the hangar behind him. In orbit, the view was worse. The colony below was a burning scar, and above it hung the fleet that did it. Dozens of ships, each shaped like a jagged obsidian claw, gliding without sound. No lights, no markings, just cold, dark death. Danny's pod was tiny, almost invisible. He powered down everything except life support and drifted behind a chunk of orbital debris. He watched as the fleet finished its work. Then, as quickly as they came, they vanished into warp space, leaving nothing but silence and smoke. Alone in the dark, Danny activated the pod's last working transmitter. He recorded a message with a voice raw from smoke and fear. He described what he saw, who they were, what they did. He didn't know if anyone would hear it. But he had to try. He set the pod's autopilot toward the nearest human listening post, 17 light-years away, and sealed himself in for the long sleep. Back on Earth, life went on as usual. Markets buzzed. Students laughed in cafeterias. Politicians argued over budgets. No one knew about Epsilon Prime yet. The message would take years to arrive. But when it did, it would change everything. The United Terran Council met in Geneva, in a building of glass and steel that overlooked Lake Geneva. The room was quiet as the fragmented transmission played on the central screen. Faces of council members grew pale. Some looked away. Others clenched their fists. When the recording ended, no one spoke for a full minute. Then Counselor Helen Briggs stood up. She was in her late 50s with sharp eyes and a voice that never rose but always cut through noise. "They think we're weak," she said. "They think we'll beg. They think we'll forget." She paused, then added, "We won't." The council debated for hours. Some wanted to send a diplomatic envoy. Others argued for strengthening borders and hiding. But Helen kept coming back to one point: if they did nothing, it would happen again. To another colony. To Earth itself. Humanity had spent centuries looking outward with hope. Now, for the first time, they had to look outward with teeth. Danny's message spread slowly at first, then like wildfire. News feeds ran it on loop. Schools held moments of silence. Memorials sprang up in city squares. People left candles, letters, toys, anything to honor the dead they never knew. But beneath the grief, something else stirred. Anger. Not wild or chaotic, but cold and focused. The kind that builds engines and forges steel. Helen Briggs didn't call for war. Not yet. She called for preparation. She pushed through emergency powers that gave her control over Earth's industrial output. Factories that once made cars and solar panels began retooling overnight. Scientists who studied stars were pulled into secret briefings. And deep beneath the moon's surface, in a vault no map showed, a project long considered too dangerous was reopened. Its name was Aegis. No one outside the highest ranks knew what it truly was. But those who did understood. If humanity was to survive, it would not be with pleas or promises. It would be with strength. And if the galaxy wanted to see how far humans would go to protect their own, it was about to find out. For now, though, Earth waited. The message from Epsilon Prime had been heard. The reply was already being built. Beneath the gray dust of the moon's far side, hidden inside a mountain older than human civilization, a door opened for the first time in 12 years. Cold air hissed out, carrying the scent of ozone and old metal. Inside, rows of dormant machines lined the walls like sleeping giants. Wires snaked across the floor thick as tree roots. Screens flickered to life one by one, casting pale blue light over the empty chamber. This was Project Aegis, and it was waking up. Carl Dawson stood at the entrance, hands in his pockets, eyes wide. He was 42, with messy brown hair and grease stains on his shirt. He hadn't slept in 36 hours, but he didn't feel tired. Not now, not with this. He'd been one of the original engineers on Aegis before it was shut down. Back then, people called it a fantasy, a dream of building warships faster than anyone thought possible. But dreams didn't feed colonies or stop invaders. So the project was buried, its funding cut, its team scattered. Now, after Epsilon Prime burned, they'd called him back. Behind him, Maya Lin stepped into the chamber. She was younger, in her early 30s, with sharp eyes and a calm voice that never rushed. She carried a datapad like it was part of her arm. "Power's stable," she said. "The core AI is online. It remembers us," Carl nodded. "Good, because we don't have time to retrain it." They walked deeper into the facility. The air grew colder. Their boots echoed on the metal floor. At the center of the complex stood the forge, a massive ring of black alloy 30 meters across, humming with stored energy. Around it floated thousands of tiny drones, each no bigger than a hand. These were the nanoforges, the heart of Aegis. They could shape metal, weave circuits, and assemble entire ship frames from raw asteroid ore in hours, not years. The idea had come from a wreck found near Neptune decades ago, a dead alien vessel with self-repairing hulls. Humans couldn't copy the tech at first, but over time, piece by piece, they learned not how to fly like the aliens, but how to build like them. The result was Aegis, not a shipyard, but a seed. Plant it in space, feed it materials and power, and it would grow a fleet. But there was a problem. The forge needed more energy than Earth's entire grid could provide. To run it at full capacity would mean blackouts, halted trains, silent factories. It would hurt. People would complain, unless they chose not to. On Earth, Helen Briggs made the call. She went on every channel, every screen, every public square. She didn't ask for permission. She told the truth. "We can hide," she said, "or we can build. If we build, cities will dim. Commutes will slow. Life will be harder for a while. But if we don't, there may be no life left to live." To everyone's surprise, the people agreed. Not all of them, but enough. Power usage dropped by 40% in a week. Families used candles at night. Factories ran only half shifts. Solar farms doubled output. Even children turned off lights when leaving rooms. It wasn't sacrifice out of fear. It was unity out of memory. They remembered Epsilon Prime. They remembered Danny Ruiz's voice, broken but clear, saying, "They didn't even warn us." Up on the moon, Carl and Maya worked day and night. They linked the forge to orbital solar arrays and lunar fusion plants. They fed it iron from nearby asteroids, silicon from regolith, and rare metals shipped up from Earth in silent cargo haulers. The first test run began 3 weeks after reactivation. The nanoforges swarmed around a floating frame. Metal flowed like liquid. Panels sealed themselves. Engines formed from molten alloy, cooling into perfect symmetry. In 6 hours, a full-sized dreadnought hung in the chamber, 3 kilometers long, matte black, no windows, no crew quarters. Just weapons, shields, and an AI core that thought faster than any human. They called it A001. It had no name because it didn't need one. It wasn't a hero. It was a tool. A response. When they powered it up, the ship didn't speak. It simply turned its sensors toward Earth as if checking on its makers. Then it drifted out of the bay and into lunar orbit, joining the silent dance of construction drones. More followed. Hour 2, A03. By the end of the first month, 20 dreadnoughts circled the moon, each one identical. Each one ready, but 20 wasn't enough. Not against an empire that ruled hundreds of worlds. So they pushed harder. Carl redesigned the nanoforge swarm to work in layers. Some building hulls, others wiring systems, others testing weapons. Maya optimized the AI to learn from each build, making the next one faster and smoother. They stopped sleeping in beds and started napping in control chairs, wrapped in thin blankets, dreaming of schematics and stress tests. Down on Earth, the changes were visible. Cities glowed dimmer at night. Highways were quieter, but in schools, kids drew pictures of black ships with Earth in the background. In bars, people toasted the silent fleet. Hope wasn't loud anymore. It was steady, quiet, like the hum of the forge. 6 months in, they hit a milestone. 10,000 dreadnoughts. The orbital docks around the moon looked like a forest of steel. Ships floated in neat rows, waiting, not for orders, but for purpose. Carl stood on the observation deck, watching them through thick glass. Maya joined him, holding 2 cups of bad coffee. "They're beautiful," she said. "Terrifying," he replied. "But yeah, beautiful." She smiled faintly. "Do you think they'll work?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "They have to." News of the fleet leaked. Not by accident, Helen wanted the galaxy to know. Scanners from neutral systems picked up the energy spikes. Alien traders whispered about the black swarm forming near Sol. Some laughed. Others grew nervous. The Krell hegemony sent a probe. It got close, scanned a few ships, and vanished. They still didn't believe humans could build an armada that fast. They thought it was a bluff. A trick of light and mirrors. They were wrong. By the 9th month, the count reached 100,000. The forge never stopped. It ate asteroids, drank solar energy, and gave birth to warships like a star gives light. Each dreadnought carried gravitic pulse cannons, weapons that didn't fire bullets or lasers but twisted space itself. One shot could crush a ship into a marble of super-dense matter. The shields could absorb plasma fire that would melt mountains. And the AI? It didn't get scared. It didn't hesitate. It calculated, adapted, and acted. Best of all, the ships needed no crews. No lives to risk. No families to mourn. Just cold, clean justice. Carl and Maya knew the risks. What if the AI turned on them? What if the fleet became something they couldn't control? But Helen had an answer for that too. "We built them to protect Earth," she said. "Not to rule it. When the threat is gone, the fleet sleeps." And so they kept building. 1 year after Epsilon Prime fell, the count hit 500,000. The forge finally slowed, not because it was tired, but because there was nowhere left to store the ships. They filled lunar orbit, stretched into Earth's Lagrange points, and drifted in silent clouds beyond Mars. 500,000 dreadnoughts. All identical. Already? Carl stood alone in the control room one night. The screens showed green across the board. Every ship was functional. Every system online. He thought about the farmers on Epsilon Prime, the kids who never made it to school that morning. The woman dragging her child through ash, he whispered, "This is for you." Then he sent the final command. Standby mode. The fleet went dark, but not dead. Just waiting. On Earth, lights began to brighten again. Trains ran on time. Factories hummed. Life returned to something like normal. But everyone knew it was different now. Humanity had shown its teeth, and the galaxy would remember. The reply to Epsilon's destruction wasn't a speech or a treaty. It was 500,000 silent ships forged in grief, waiting for the moment to speak. The Krell hegemony had ruled the outer spiral for over 300 years. Their ships patrolled 100 star systems. Their laws were enforced by fire. They had crushed rebellions, absorbed weaker species, and erased entire cultures that refused to bow. To them, humanity was a footnote, a young, noisy species clinging to a few muddy worlds, building toys they called starships. The destruction of Epsilon Prime had been a message. Stay in your place, or be removed. They never expected an answer. When the first human dreadnoughts appeared near the Krell border world of Vexus, the local defense fleet barely reacted. Scanners showed an odd energy signature, massive but slow-moving. Command assumed it was a mining operation or a failed colony ship. Then more signatures appeared, hundreds, thousands, then tens of thousands, all identical, all silent. Admiral Relic of the Krell 7th Fleet was a veteran of 23 campaigns. His armor bore the scars of plasma burns. His eyes had watched a dozen worlds surrender. He did not fear humans. He pitied them. Send a warning burst, he ordered from his command throne aboard the warship Iron Maw. Tell them to disperse or be destroyed. A single energy pulse shot toward the nearest dreadnought. It struck the hull and vanished. No explosion, no damage. The dreadnought didn't even flinch. It just kept drifting forward, part of a wall of black steel stretching across the sky. Relic frowned. Fire full broadside. All ships. Target the lead vessel. 12,000 Krell warships opened fire at once. Beams of superheated plasma, antimatter torpedoes, and gravity lances filled the void. The light was so bright it blinded sensors for seconds. When the glare faded, the lead dreadnought still floated, unharmed. Its shields shimmered faintly like heat over desert sand. Then it fired back. A single pulse no wider than a city block shot from its bow. It didn't explode. It twisted space itself. The nearest Krell cruiser folded inward, crushed into a sphere no bigger than a house. Then it vanished with a soft pop. 3 more ships suffered the same fate before the fleet could react. Relic shouted orders. Fighters launched. Torpedoes reloaded, but the dreadnoughts didn't wait. They moved as one, spreading out in a perfect sphere around the Krell formation. No comms, no taunts, just silence and death. One by one, the Krell ships fell. Their weapons bounced off adaptive shields. Their evasive maneuvers meant nothing. The dreadnoughts predicted every turn. Within 5 minutes, half the fleet was gone. Within 10, only a few escape pods remained. Relic tried to flee. His ship's engines screamed as it turned toward warp. But a dreadnought appeared directly in his path, as if it had known where he would go before he did. The last thing he saw was a pulse of blue light. Then nothing. The battle lasted 19 minutes. When it ended, the 7th Fleet no longer existed. Not a single ship survived. Not a single broadcast escaped. The dreadnoughts didn't celebrate. They didn't linger. They simply powered down their weapons, formed up, and waited. Back on Earth, the command center under Geneva held its breath. They had watched the entire engagement through long-range probes. No one cheered. No one spoke. Helen Briggs stood with her hands on the console, eyes fixed on the screen showing the silent armada. She knew this was only the beginning. The Krell High Conclave received the news 3 days later. Their sensors had gone dark over Vexis. Scans showed no wreckage, no debris, just empty space. At first, they thought it was a glitch. Then another border station vanished. Then a supply convoy. Each time, the same pattern. Silence, then nothing. Panic spread through the hegemony's upper ranks. How could humans build so many ships? Where did they get the technology? Why were they so quiet? They sent scouts. Everyone disappeared. Then came the first real strike. The dreadnoughts hit the Krell shipyard at Goris, a massive orbital complex where warships were born. It was guarded by over 5,000 vessels and shielded by planetary batteries. The Krell thought it was safe. They were wrong. At 0300 local time, 50,000 dreadnoughts dropped out of warp directly above the shipyard. No warning. No demands. They fired. Gravitic pulses tore through shields like paper. The shipyard collapsed inward, crushed by forces it couldn't understand. The defending fleet scrambled, but they were outmatched in speed, power, and numbers. Within an hour, Gorus was gone. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't defending. They were dismantling. Across the hegemony, systems went on high alert. Fleets gathered. Planets built bunkers. But the dreadnoughts didn't attack capitals or cities. They struck only military targets, shipyards, command hubs, weapons depots. Civilian centers were left untouched. This wasn't revenge. It was precision. On Earth, people watched the reports with quiet pride. Children drew pictures of black ships saving the galaxy. Old soldiers wept, remembering wars they'd lost. But no one called for more. They trusted the fleet. They trusted the silence. Carl and Maya monitored everything from the Lunar Command Nexus. The dreadnoughts operated on a decentralized AI network. No single mind, no central command. Each ship shared data instantly. If one learned a new tactic, all knew it within seconds. They were evolving. They're not just machines, Maya said one night, watching a replay of the gory strike. They're a single will, Carl nodded. The will of everyone who lost someone on Epsilon. The Krell tried to negotiate. They sent a message through neutral channels. Cease your attacks. We offer peace, Helen Briggs replied with one sentence. You offered Epsilon Prime no peace. You will receive none. The dreadnoughts kept moving, system after system fell, not to invasion but to erasure. The Krell fleet shrank by the day. Morale collapsed. Soldiers refused orders. Some even defected, fleeing to neutral worlds with stories of silent black ships that couldn't be stopped. The galaxy took notice. Species that once mocked humanity now watched in awe. The Zenthari, a peaceful trader race, sent envoys to Earth. We did not believe you could do this, their leader said. Now we ask, what do you want? Helen's answer was simple. To be left alone. Danny Ruiz, recovered and honored, joined the new diplomatic corps. He traveled to neutral systems not with threats but with truth. We didn't start this, he told the Zenthari, but we'll finish it. Not to conquer, to protect. Many believed him. Back in Krell space, the High Conclave grew desperate. They gathered every remaining warship, over 80,000, and fortified their core worlds. They built new weapons. They mined space with antimatter traps. They prepared for a final stand. They still didn't understand. The dreadnoughts weren't coming for a battle. They were coming for an end, and when they arrived, they wouldn't need to fire a single shot to win, because by then, the Krell would already know the truth. Humanity was no longer the weak species they'd crushed on Epsilon Prime. They were something else now. Something forged in silence, built in grief, and ready to defend their future with 500,000 voices that spoke only through action. The war had changed everything, but not in the way anyone expected. After the fall of Gorus and the silent destruction of the 7th Fleet, the Krell hegemony stopped sending warships. Instead, they sent silence of their own. No broadcasts, no patrols, no signals from their core worlds. It was as if they had pulled inward, holding their breath, waiting for the black tide to reach their heart. On Earth, life tried to return to normal. Lights burned bright again. Trains ran on time. Children played in parks under clear skies. But people walked differently now, straighter, quieter, with a new kind of calm in their eyes. They knew they were protected, not by soldiers or walls, but by 500,000 ships that never slept. Carl Dawson still lived on the moon, though he visited Earth more often now. He'd grown tired of the hum of machines and the cold metal floors. He missed rain. He missed the smell of coffee from a real shop, not a recycler. But every time he thought about quitting, he remembered Epsilon Prime. So he stayed, watching over the fleet like a parent watches a sleeping child. Maya Lin rarely left the Lunar Command Nexus. She had become the voice between Earth and the Armada. Not through orders, there were none, but through updates, diagnostics, and quiet conversations with the AI network that ran the dreadnoughts. She didn't call it a mind. She called it a memory of every human who had ever been lost to violence, now turned into something that could say no more. Down on Earth, Helen Briggs worked tirelessly. She turned down offers to become Earth's permanent leader. She refused statues, medals, even a quiet retirement. My job isn't done, she told reporters, until the last child can sleep without fear. That fear, however, was shifting. Some began to wonder, what happens when the war ends? Would the dreadnought stand down? Or would they keep watching forever? Rumors spread online, wild theories about AI turning on its creators. about Earth becoming a fortress no one could leave. Helen addressed them in a simple speech. We built them to guard, not to rule. When the threat is gone, they will rest. That is the promise we made to ourselves. Meanwhile, Danny Ruiz boarded a small diplomatic vessel named the Horizon. It was unarmed, painted white with Earth's symbol on its side, a blue circle with a single olive branch. His mission was clear: talk to those who hadn't chosen sides. The Zenthari had already opened channels, but others remained wary. The Virel, the Umak, even the quiet moon dwellers of the Seren cluster. All had seen what happened to the Krell. None wanted to be next. His first stop was the Zenthari homeworld, a planet of soft winds and glass cities. Their leader, Elder Mira, greeted him not in a throne room but in a garden under twin moons. You come not with weapons, she said, but with words. That is rare these days, Danny smiled. We used weapons because words failed us once. We don't want them to fail again. He told them about Epsilon Prime, not just the fire, but the schoolyards, the bakeries, the old man who fixed radios for free. He spoke of loss, not glory, and when he finished, Elder Mira placed a hand on his arm. You are not conquerors, she said. You are mourners who learned to fight. From there, Danny traveled to the Virel Concord, a loose alliance of asteroid miners and traders. They were rough, suspicious, and armed to the teeth. But when Danny showed them footage of the dreadnoughts bypassing civilian stations during strikes, choosing only military targets, they listened. One old miner spat on the floor, then said, If you wanted to rule, you'd have taken our mines by now. You didn't, that means something. Word spread. Humanity wasn't expanding. They weren't demanding tribute or territory. They were drawing a line and standing behind it. Back in Krell space, the silence grew heavier. Scouts sent by neutral parties reported that entire fleets had been pulled back to the homeworld, Xylos Prime. Orbital defenses were being upgraded daily. Antimatter mines floated in dense clouds. Gravity tethers stretched between moons, ready to crush any ship that passed too close. The Krell were preparing for the end, but they were preparing for the wrong kind of end. The dreadnoughts didn't rush. They moved slowly, deliberately, like a tide that knew it couldn't be stopped. System by system, they cleared the outer rings, not with fire, but with presence. Krell outposts surrendered without a shot. Soldiers laid down their arms, tired of a war they never understood. Some even sent messages to Earth. We did not choose this. Spare our families. Helen ordered the fleet to accept all surrenders. No executions. No reprisals. Only disarmament. Carl watched the data streams from the moon. They're breaking, he said to Maya. Not from fear of death, but from shame. Maya nodded. They thought strength was destruction. Now they see it can be restraint. On Earth, schools began teaching new lessons, not just about stars and atoms, but about responsibility, about what it meant to hold power and not misuse it. Parents told their children, we have protectors now, but we must still be kind. The fleet reached the final ring of Krell defenses, only one jump away from Xylos Prime. The High Conclave broadcast a final message across all channels. It was not a plea. It was a challenge. Come and die like the insects you are, it said. We will burn your fleet to dust. Helen didn't respond. She didn't need to. Instead, she gave one quiet order to the Lunar Command Nexus. Prepare for final approach. No weapons unless fired upon. Carl and Maya exchanged a look. This was it. The moment everything had been leading to Danny Ruiz, still aboard the Horizon, sent one last message to Earth. If they listen, he wrote, this ends without more blood. If they don't, at least we tried. The dreadnoughts formed up, 500,000 of them. Not in attack formation, but in a perfect sphere around the Krell homeworld. They powered down their weapons. They shut off all offensive systems. They simply waited. And in that silence, something unexpected happened. A single Krell ship, one small courier vessel, left the planet's surface. It flew toward the human lines, running no lights, broadcasting no signal. When it reached the edge of the armada, it stopped. Then slowly, it lowered its shields. From inside came a voice, shaky but clear. We could surrender. The war wasn't over yet. But it was close. And for the first time, it looked like it might end not with fire, but with a choice. The Krell homeworld hung in space like a wounded beast, its skies dark with ash from its own fear. Around it, 500,000 dreadnoughts formed a silent ring. No weapons charged, no engines roaring, just stillness. The single Krell courier ship drifted at the edge of the formation, its hull scarred, its lights dim. From its comms came a voice older than the war, tired in a way only those who have ordered too much death can be. "We surrender," it said again, as if testing the words. On Earth, Helen Briggs stood alone in the command room beneath Geneva. She didn't cheer. She didn't smile. She simply nodded and gave one order: accept their surrender. Send peace terms. No occupation. No executions. Only disarmament. The reply went out at light speed. Within hours, the Krell High Conclave, what remained of it, signed the agreement. Their warships powered down. Their orbital guns went cold. The antimatter mines were disarmed by their own crews. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as an empire that had ruled for centuries laid down its arms not to a greater force of violence, but to a greater force of will. Danny Ruiz was the first human to set foot on Xylos Prime after the surrender. He wore no armor, carried no weapon, just a datapad with the peace terms and a small Earth flag pinned to his jacket. He walked through the capital city, past broken statues and empty barracks to the Hall of Echoes, where the Conclave once gave orders that doomed worlds. There he met the last surviving Krell leader, a gray-scaled elder named Vexer, who had voted against the attack on Epsilon Prime but was overruled. They spoke for hours, not as victor and vanquished, but as two beings who had seen too much loss. Danny told him about the school on Epsilon that taught music and math. Vexer spoke of Krell children who had never known peace. When they parted, Vexer handed him a small stone carved with ancient symbols. "This means remember so you do not repeat," he said. Back on Earth, the mood was quiet, not jubilant. People gathered in parks and squares not to celebrate, but to reflect. Candles were lit for Epsilon Prime. Names were read aloud. Farmers, teachers, doctors, children. The victory felt heavy, not light, because everyone knew. They had won not by being better fighters, but by refusing to become what they fought. Carl and Maya oversaw the recall of the fleet. One by one, the dreadnoughts powered down their cores, folded their weapon arrays, and turned toward home. They did not return to orbit around Earth. Instead, they drifted outward past Neptune into the cold dark of the Oort cloud. There, they entered standby mode, dormant, but ready. Like wolves sleeping at the edge of a village, guarding it without entering, the forge beneath the moon was sealed again. Its nanoforges powered down. Its lights went out. Carl stood in the empty chamber one last time, running a hand along the cold metal of the central ring. "You did good," he whispered. Then he walked out and never looked back. Maya stayed longer. She uploaded a final update to the fleet's AI network, a single line of code that read, "Protect life. Do not seek war." Then she shut the system into sleep mode. As she left, she turned off the lights herself. On Earth, life changed in small ways. Trade routes reopened, now with human escorts that were respected, not feared. Neutral species sent ambassadors, not spies. The Xanthari helped rebuild communication networks. The Varel shared mining tech in exchange for Earth's clean energy designs. Humanity didn't take over. They joined. Schools taught new history, not just of wars, but of choices. Children learned that strength wasn't about how many ships you had, but how you used them. That true power was knowing when not to strike. Helen Briggs stepped down from the council 6 months after the peace. She moved to a small house by the sea, where she grew tomatoes and read books that had nothing to do with strategy or war. Reporters asked her why she didn't stay in power. She just smiled and said, "My job was to make sure we survived long enough to be kind again. Now it's someone else's turn." Danny Ruiz became Earth's first permanent envoy to the galactic community. He traveled from world to world, not with demands but with open hands. He carried stories, not threats. And slowly the galaxy began to see humanity not as a threat but as a neighbor. Years passed. The dreadnoughts remained in the Oort cloud, silent and still. Ships passing through that region gave them a wide berth, not out of fear but respect. They were a reminder, a promise carved in steel and fire. No one ever tried to attack a human colony again. And on quiet nights, when the sky was clear and the stars shone bright, people on Earth would look up and feel a strange peace. Not because they were safe, but because they had chosen to protect that safety without losing their soul. The galaxy learned a hard lesson: never mistake kindness for weakness. And never ever burn a human world, because Earth's reply would not be words. It would be 500,000 silent ships, and the will to use them only when all else failed.